Hello, this is Rabbi Tobin. We're coming from B'nai Shalom in West Orange, New Jersey again, and we're studying Chagiga, Chapter 2. We're on page 13a. If you are seeing us for the first time, you may find it interesting to go on our website, b'naishalom.net, and from there to click to our YouTube page or archived classes, and you can find all the different sessions of this Talmud class. They're with their dates going all the way back to January, where I gave an introduction to Talmud, which may give you some background information. Otherwise, we're just going to dive right in. Okay, we are now at a turning point where the Mishnah in Chapter 2 gave us the categories of topic which have prohibitions. The prohibitions are in ascending order of stringency, which parallels descending order of number of students you're allowed to teach at a time. So the more students you're allowed to teach at a time, the more lenient that is. The fewer the number of students you're allowed to teach at a time, the more stringent that is. And the topics are forbidden sexual relations, the acts of creation, and the acts of the divine chariot, which is now what the topic is going to move towards. They dismissed the sexual topic pretty quickly, because after all, you're not allowed to teach three people. And does anyone remember, just by way of review, what the reason was? They said, Minahani Milan, they asked for a Torah verse. Why is it that you can't teach three people sexual rules? Did they find a Torah verse? They did not. They played with some, but none of them worked. They did have one source from outside of the traditional Jewish canon, which worked towards the end. But the main idea was simply logic. They used logic. If you have two kids in front of you and you're talking to one of them about an important detail of who they're not allowed to be intimate with, the other one's going to listen. He's got nothing else to do. Right. If there's three kids in the class and you're talking to one, the other two all of a sudden have something to do, which is distract each other and talk to each other and not listen. That was the whole thing. And then the rabbis said, well, doesn't that apply to every rule of the Torah? Right? Why does that apply uniquely here? And then they said uniquely here because these are the kinds of things that people have an urge to do, and that gives you another level of stringency, another level of care and concern that you need to make sure they get it right. I may not get the lesson, if I'm a student, about how to kosher a pot correct because I wasn't listening one day, but I can go look it up. And it's not like when the pot shows up in front of me, I'm going to be suddenly driven by my animal instincts to trafe the pot, right? I'm not going to make that mistake as a matter of instinct and drive, whereas in the other cases, there's some things there where, quite frankly, you really need to be careful because given the opportunity, people might have a moment of weakness, and then oy vavoy, you're in a very bad place. All right, so that was the first topic. It was handled very quickly. Then we did the Maaseh Breshit, the laws of creation, and the second part of the Mishnah with prohibitions about what is before and after, above and below, was expounded. And basically, they have a whole bunch of midrashim about the creation of the first man and the scope and the size of the universe and the layers of the earth and what's under the earth and the layers of the heavens and what's above the heavens. And they filled it all out in a very imaginative way, in a very inconsistent way, as far as one person's teachings or another. There's no clear teaching or clear dogma that comes out of this chapter that says a Jew must believe that the cosmology of the universe looks like this. That did not happen. Many suggestions were given. Most of them have layers of metaphor associated with them, but the driving force that made them think that that's the way the world was this verse from Psalms and that verse from Psalms. They have this verse that talks about something being on top of the wind, and something else that says wind on top of the waters, and something else that says waters on top of the mountains. And so they said there has to be a spirit and a wind and a mountain and a water, and they have to run in that order. And so they kind of created a cosmology out of a patchwork of random verses out of the Tanakh that use words to refer to each other. There was one teaching that talked about there being 7 heavens. This was a relatively coherent teaching. It named each of the heavens, but again, at the end, it relied upon verses to presume that those heavens were there and what those heavens were named, and it broke down right at the top where it's closest to God, kivyachol, as if we were to talk about God in physical ways, which of course we can't, but they do. And so that top level, the level of the realm of the souls, or is that the realm of angelic beings, or what is that, and where is God? And that basically gets dropped by the time they're done. And again, they don't have a clear, coherent dogma or creed that anybody would come out of that chapter and say, this is what you must believe about there being X number of heavens. This, of course, becomes fertile territory for people who have other cosmological needs and other cosmological drives. So, for example, the people who study Kabbalah are going to look at these layers of heaven in this Baraita, and they're going to match it to the Kabbalistic teachings in whichever stream of Kabbalah they're studying. And they're going to find a place, whether it's Sefirot, or whether it's the Pardes, or whether it's Partsufim, or whatever the different layer or system of Kabbalah is that they're working on. They're going to find reflections of it in this Baraita, but this Baraita doesn't use the word Kabbalah or talk about those kinds of things at all. It's just one of the mysterious kind of interpretable passages of Talmud that is amenable to use by those systems of thought. So you'll see it pop up here and there. At this point, though, the Gemara is pretty much done with that. And now it's going to move on, and it's going to move on to the topic of the Merkavah. And the real question is, you have this teaching that you can only teach Merkavah to one, only if he is Chacham Umevin Midato. Has to be a Chacham, a wise person, a sage, fully learned in Torah, and not just any old Chacham, but the kind who can understand these things without being taught. Then you can teach them, right? Which is probably nobody in this room, right? And that's the idea. And what we saw last week at the end of our session was this concept of a scholar who was going to learn from his teacher, the Maaseh Merkavah. His teacher was a great scholar in Maaseh Merkavah, and the scholar himself objected to the teacher, don't teach me, I'm not old enough yet. And then when he was old enough, his teacher died and didn't convey it to him, which is, of course, interpreted by Talmud as the hand of God, or interpreted by this man as the hand of God. Rav Asi, one of the great late rabbis of the Talmud, offers to teach this guy what he learned from that teacher, his rabbi. And the response is, if I was supposed to learn, God would have kept him alive, and I would have learned from him instead of from you. So that's one teaching that shows the reticence to explore Merkavah, even by a Chacham, even from a sage who is a Chacham who knows this and is willing to convey it. Still trepidation, still concern, fear, reticence to this material. The second story was, you'll recall, that the rabbis of Pumbedita, the great rabbis of the great yeshiva of Pumbedita in the Talmudic age, knew of this one rabbi who knew Maaseh Merkavah, and they didn't. So obviously this is not well-known lore. This is secretly guarded lore. And they made a deal. They said, look, we're great at Maaseh Breshit, a Babylonian yeshiva. It's not surprising that they would know the stars and the planets and astronomy and astrology and all of those things. Babylonia had been doing that for over 1,000, 2,000 years by the time Pumbedita is in the Talmud. So they know the physical world and the Maaseh Breshit, and they have all their beliefs about it. And they cut a deal with this guy. We'll teach you Maaseh Breshit if you teach us Merkavah. He comes. He says, you first. Right? They teach him Breshit, and they say, okay, your turn, Merkavah. And he says, right, words of honey are best kept under the tongue. And they say, huh? And he goes, shh. And then they say, but we already studied it all the way up to, and they quote from the first chapter of Ezekiel, where the vision of the chariot in the heaven happens, all the way up to a very late point in the chapter. And his response is, then you know it. And then they start to have an argument. Well, if that's what it is, then what's the prohibition? Because we were all able to study that without a prohibition. All right? So that's kind of what we got up to. And they argued a little bit. One of the points that they were talking about was they were talking about up until the prophet says, and I saw. And then what did you see? Well, that's what we're not allowed to talk about. And one of the end I saw describes a whole series of activities which have fire and flashings and sparks and lightnings, like chashmal. And this word chashmal exists nowhere else in Tanakh. So the rabbis don't know what it means, right? So they are now going to do a philology game about the etymology of the word chashmal. And they're going to play with trying to come up, what does chashmal mean? All right? Well, in modern Hebrew, it's electricity. But that's because Eliezer ben Yehuda took it from the prophet of Ezekiel and said, it sounds like electricity to me. They obviously didn't know what electricity was in the Talmud. So chashmal originally does, and they certainly didn't know what electricity was, right, in Ezekiel's day. So when Ezekiel's trying to come up with a word to describe what he sees, and he says chashmal, it's not because he knows what electricity is and he's calling it electricity. You've got it entirely backwards. Making the word chashmal the modern word for electricity is something that was done without background in the modern age. Right? Now, that's a problem because every Israeli is going to go, oh, electricity. Right? And you're kind of stuck if you've got that in your mother tongue. The rabbis don't have it in their mother tongue, so they're going to break it down and they're going to play with what the word means. Okay? So we're on 13a.
Before you go to that, can I...
That's review. More texts? Yep. Pass them down, pass them down. That's not the right one. That's the right one.
There's some back here too.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
What I took away from last week's study of the Merkavah was that the rabbis who knew about it didn't. By the story of the guy who said, I'm not old enough, and then the story of the guy who said, no, it's best kept under the tongue, that kind of stuff. They didn't really want to teach it because it's not, it truly is mystical or beyond a teaching subject, which is why it's the one-on-one and somebody well qualified. And if it goes away from Jewish learning, that's probably a good idea.
Okay, so you've learned a lesson that they didn't say. You're drawing
Right.
conclusions.
Right.
The conclusion that you're saying you drew was they're not willing to teach it because they're really uncomfortable with it, that it's not something that an average person really should be learning. There's some kind of danger beyond taboo associated with it. And then you add, and if somehow the chain of tradition were broken so it wasn't conveyed, that would be okay, maybe even good.
Exactly.
The last piece they don't have. The last piece isn't there. I think that whenever you raise up a prohibition and you say it's only between 1 and 1, you're actually ensuring people's interest in it. Right?
Forbidden
You
fruit.
tell a room full of people there's only one cookie left. They're all going to look at the cookie, even people who don't eat cookies. Right? So this actually, I think, maintains interest in it, but it does certainly limit how it happens. And by the Talmud telling us stories, I'll help you find the page in a second. The Talmud telling us stories about people who didn't want to do it, right, is almost, methinks he doth protest too much.
Oh, really?
Right? They have so many stories about it, and he didn't do it, and he didn't do it, and he didn't do it. Indeed, somebody was doing it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had a person to study with. He wouldn't have had a friend willing to tell him. He wouldn't have, right? Now, what we're going to see in today's section is the possibility that somebody can come up with it on their own. Now, if you've got something that is so dangerous that the greatest chacham of the generation is reticent to study it with the second greatest chacham of the generation, and some pisher comes up with it on their own, then what does that do to the system? And we're going to see. It creates quite a bit. Okay, so we're on 13a, way down towards the bottom of the page, and we should have a Rav Yehuda said, or probably in the Sansino, Rab Judah.
Right.
You got a Rab Judah?
Judah.
That's my Western New York accent there. That's Rav Yehuda said, and he's going to quote Hananiah. Okay, so they just finished their little thing about Chashmal. It first got in with Rabbi Yitzchak says that Ad Chashmal is where the prohibition comes in. And they had said, until I saw the Chashmal, you can teach normally, and from there on, you're not allowed to. You can only teach chapter headings. And then they argued about that. And now we're at Rav Yehuda. Okay? Oh, then they have the story of the youth. Right? The youth who taught about the Chashmal, and he was flambéed immediately. That was right before us. It was Umi Darshinan B'Chashmal. V'hahu Yanuka de Darash B'Chashmal. Wasn't there that youth who was expounding on Chashmal? V'nafka Nur V'achalte. And a fire came out and burned him up. Right? So this is, again, a story that tells about how maybe the prohibition about studying the pieces of the Maaseh Merkavah begins with the word Chashmal. Because at the word Chashmal, we have this youth who was giving a midrash on it, and he got burnt to a crisp by some miraculous fire, right?
Lightning.
Not lightning, it's nura, a fire, flame, right? Because they know a word for lightning. They'd say barak or baraka in the Aramaic, and so you don't, it's fire. So they say, Shana Yanuka, a youth is different. Delav mate zimne. He hadn't reached his time yet. So he wasn't old enough to be doing it, so he was vulnerable to it. So he wound up doing things he's not old enough to do, and he fell susceptible to the dangers of the power of this thing. So presumably there's almost a what they call a sympathetic magic here, where by invoking Chashmal, the Chashmal itself bursts out into reality, and the idea is that the Chashmal itself is what has consumed this child. So this, maybe he's a 15-year-old, maybe he's a 25-year-old, I don't know, but relatively young from a rabbinic point of view, and he's teaching Chashmal such that he actually releases Chashmal, which immediately kills him.
But he must have had some understanding of it for him to be a threat.
He's not wrong, because he actually gets to the real Chashmal. I mean, there's no better demonstration of what Chashmal is than having it burn you up in front of everybody. Now, everybody in the room has learned a perfect lesson from you, right? Now we know what Chashmal is. Obviously, it's a problem, right? So it brings this second level of taboo that we had with the rabbi not wanting to learn until he was old enough. That's being told now, and by the way, if you didn't do that, we have the other story where somebody did that, and this is what happened to them. Okay? Okay, now, Amar Rav Yehuda. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Bram Zachor Oto Aish Latov. In truth, that man has to be remembered favorably. And who is that man? The Hananiah ben Chizkiyahu Shemo. So this is Hananiah ben Chizkiah is his name. Ve'ilamahu, if it weren't for him, Nignaz Sefer Yechezkel. The book of Yechezkel would have been put in the Geniza. It would have been concealed and put away. What does this mean? Put into the Geniza or concealed means the book of Ezekiel would not have made it into the Tanakh. If it weren't for the teachings of Hananiah ben Chizkiah, the book of Ezekiel would not have been put into the Hebrew Bible. Okay? Let me pause here and give you the background why. There are things, there's a couple of things. One, the book of Ezekiel has all of this stuff in the first chapter. Highly problematic. And not only because it's highly problematic because of its topic, it's self-contradictory. And much of what we're going to do today is we're going to see where the contradictions are in the images, particularly in the faces of the figures. There's a listing of the faces of the figures where it says, and these are the four faces that I saw. And then it goes back and it says the same vision again, and it says, these are the four faces that I saw, and they're not the same faces. So it's self-contradictory, so how can you have a revelation that's self-contradictory, right? We have this concept as well that in the prediction of the return, there will be a particular line of priests who will become the priests in the new temple after the destruction of the first temple or the building of the second temple, and the laws of the second temple are given in some detail, and they contradict the laws of Leviticus. How can that be? And again, in the same way, it's going to be solved by Hanani ben Chizkiah. What does he do? Shayu devarim sotrim divrei Torah, because it has words that contradict the words of the Torah, which I just referred to. Maasa, what did he do? He'elu lo shlosh me'ot garbe shemen, v'yashav ba'aliyah v'drasho. They gave him 300 barrels of oil. They locked him up in an attic, and he didn't come out until he had expounded on and solved every single contradiction and problem in the entire book of Ezekiel. 300 barrels of oil, Think about your Hanukkah lamps. If you run Hanukkah lamps on oil, a little thing this big lasts for what? 2 hours?
Maybe, yeah.
An hour, 2 hours. How long would a barrel last?
A month?
Several. I mean, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, right? 300 barrels.
Yeah.
He's burning the midnight oil,
6 years.
right? For a long time. Could be years that he's up there, and he doesn't come out until he has solved every problem in the entire book of Ezekiel. By the way, we have no record of how he solved the problems, only that he solved the problems. Okay? Until he reconciled them with the Torah. So, that indicates some sense of the difficulty of the Masei Merkavah. He's also an example of what? How can he do that? This book will not even be allowed in the Tanakh. Why? You're not even allowed to teach it, unless he's being a chacham umevin midato alone. He's that chacham. So he's the one who really instigates the line of teaching in that sense, because it doesn't say he learns it from a rabbi. Now, it doesn't say where he learns it from, but it seems that he's solving these problems by force of intellect, right? Okay, now we're going to see a similar case. Amar le Rabbi Yochanan le Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yochanan says to Rabbi Elazar, Ta and Agmarach b'Masei Merkavah. I will come and teach you the Masei Merkavah. Rabbi Elazar says to Yochanan, I'm not old enough. Did we do this together? I turned the page the wrong way. The Sansinos got me going left to right. All right, they brought him up 300 barrels of oil and until he reconciled. Now, Hananiah ben Chizkiah saves the book of Ezekiel on another occasion. Tanu Rabbanan. Maaseh b'tinok echad, there was an incident with a child. Shaya koreh beveit rabo b'sefer Yechezkel. He was reading in his rabbi's house, in his school, from the book of Yechezkel. V'haya mevin b'chashmal. And he figured out the chashmal. So this is, I got like a 6-year-old. Aleph, bet, vet, gimel, dalet, hey. And he figures out the chashmal when he's reading. Right? V'yatsa eish mechashmal usrafato. And the fire of the chashmal came out and burned him up. Uvikshu lignos sefer Yechezkel. And as a result, they wanted to prohibit, bury, hide the book of Yechezkel. Right? Amar lehem Hananiah ben Chizkiah, but Hananiah ben Chizkiah said to them at that time, Im ze chacham, if the kid's a chacham, hakol chachamim hen. Are they all prodigies? So if the child's brilliant enough to comprehend the deeper meaning of the chashmal, are all children that brilliant? Like, why would you hide the book just because one wunder kid figured it out and got killed by it? Right? You don't prohibit the book because one person was on that level. Right? And what's the implication for adults? If you're an adult and you happen to be the wunder kid who figures it out, you're a chacham. And you could survive the chashmal. Right? So why would you prohibit it from adults by not putting it in the Tanakh just because some wunder kid got burned up by it once because he figured it out and the chashmal burst into the world and killed him? So I have a question for you. Is that the same story as the other story about the Yanuka? The youth who is Darshan, who is teaching about the Chashmal? This is a Tinok in the Beit Rabo, as opposed to a Yanuka who was Darshan. So a Tinok Beveit Rabo, Hebrew.
Okay, but
It's
what age group is a Tino?
So a Tinok could be a baby or a toddler, very young. Yanuka really comes from the word that means a nursling, but it could also mean a youth. So they're both very young. They're both very young. The difference is one is in Hebrew and one is in Aramaic. And so the Aramaic one was the first one we heard. It was Yanuka de Darshan. And this is Tinok Bebeit Rabo. So one is just in the Talmudic age as a story they know, and this one is a Baraita handed down from the age of the Mishnah. Is one adapting the other story, or do we have two different stories?
So where,
I don't know. Slightly different. But the answer is the same. Yeah?
But the first one, it says he was teaching.
The first one, he was a youth that was teaching. And this one is a youth who is learning.
So he was already recognized as,
Unless he had no right to teach. Right? I have teenage kids. They lecture me all the time. It doesn't mean that they have the authority or the knowledge to do this.
doesn't mean they're wrong.
Doesn't mean they're wrong, but it's also like higher rates to insure them when they get behind the wheel, because they're the kinds of people who can do something wrong and the chashmal can take them, God forbid. Right? Teenagers put themselves in danger. Right? They don't know. They can't recognize it. So these kids are almost like they don't know the danger that they're in. They just do it. Right? As opposed to an adult who's going to be more careful about this stuff. So the lesson in both cases is don't study it if you're young. It's dangerous. You can study it when you're old, but be careful. That's the takeaway. It's just interesting that one is clearly older than the other because it's in Hebrew and it's from a Baraita. It's a Mishnah age story. It's not just a Talmudic magical story. Okay? All right. Now that we have this, we have the word, my chashmal. So what is the word chashmal? And Amar Rav Yehuda. So now we get to Rav Yehuda. So we had Amar Rav Yehuda and we had a couple of stories, and now we get to Rav Yehuda on the topic we want to know. What is chashmal? And his answer on the top of 13b, for those of you who are lost, turn to page 13b.
And you know in the Hebrew?
You want to, what's that?
In the Hebrew?
What's that?
Where are you?
Yud Gimel with one dot. I'm at the top of the page, 13b, the first word. Chayot Eish Mimalalot.
No, but I'm looking.
Middle column of the page,
Yeah,
top of the middle column, first word Chayot.
got it.
Okay? The middle column is Gemara. The column on that page to the left is Rashi, and to the right is Tosafot. The middle column is all we're doing in this class. We're not doing Rashi and Tosafot in the class. Okay? So there's 3 columns on every page. The middle column is always the Gemara. Okay? So where are we? We're on Chagiga 13b. Okay? And what are we going to do? We're going to take this word chashmal and we're going to play with it. So Rabbi Yehuda is the first one to answer. He says it's chayot eish mitalalot. So he's going to say chayot eish mitalalot. See how he broke the word apart? Chet shin mitalalot. Chayot eish mitalalot, which means living beings, fire that speak. From the word milah. You know the word milah in Hebrew means word. Milalel is to speak, to utter, in that sense. Okay, so this is chayot eish mimalalot. First 3 words of 13b. Okay? B'matnita Tana, and in a Braita it taught, itim chashot itim mimalalot. So the Braita is going to explain that, and it's going to say sometimes they talk. And sometimes they are chashot. So one possibility for the shin is eish, meaning fire. The other is chash, which is actually going to take both and make it chash. Okay? So the second interpretation says chash milalel. The first interpretation says chayot eish milalalot. So they're breaking the letters of the word down to say what does the word mean. First one says living fire talkers, and the other one says silent talkers. Chash, choshesh. Chash means to be quiet. So what do they mean by silent talkers? B'sha'ah shehadibur yotzei mipi hakadosh baruch hu chashush. When God is talking, they are silent. Uv'sha'ah she'ein hadibur yotzei mipi hakadosh baruch hu mimalalot. When God is talking, they are silent. When God is silent, they are talking. So these are the angels, or the beings, these heavenly aliens. So the person, Ezekiel, is looking up and having a vision of God, and he sees chashmal. So our first interpretation of chashmal was some kind of flashing fire. But this is actually conflating, and it is like a description of these angelic beings that he's seeing. And it's just another way to talk about the same things, that they are beings of fire and they're talking. Or when God was talking to him, they were silent, and when God paused, they were speaking. So it's the experience of the prophet being described in the word chashmal. And chashmal is trying to describe the angelic beings that he's seeing, describing them as some kind of fiery beasts or some kind of talking and not talking beasts. Okay? So in other words, we're not trying to figure out what chashmal is. Chashmal is a way of describing these beings. Okay? Which is interesting because the question that was asked is, what's the chashmal? Right? Okay, next. Now the Gemara is going to deal with that. So, Hachayot ratzo nashov b'mar'ei habazak. This is a quote from the first chapter of Ezekiel. The angelic beings ran to and fro in the appearance of bazak, for lack of a better word, some kind of flashing fire.
Where Bezek comes from.
Again, the modern Israelis have Bezek as the electric company, right?
Oil company.
The oil company, the energy company.
Energy.
Okay? Amar Rav Yehuda, so Rav Yehuda, still our guy here, comes and says, Be'or hayotzei mipi ha'kivshan. It's like the flame that emerges from the opening of a furnace. And not just a furnace, but like a smelting furnace. So if you've ever seen a picture of the opening of the fire where you're melting metal in there and you put the rod in and get it to white hot and bring it out and bang it, the fire that kind of hits and sprays and bubbles in that opening, that's what Rabbi Yehuda says it is. Okay? Now the Gemara is going to ask a question. By b'mar'ei habazak, what is like the appearance of a bazak? What does it mean? And Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina says, Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Ke'or hayotze mibein hacharasin. He says it's like the flame that comes out between the pot shards. And again, if you're trying to heat something to super, super hot, you don't just build a bed of coals. You need to reflect the heat back on it, which is why a furnace is built the way it is. And then you blow wind in onto the coals in the furnace where it's reflecting the heat back. And what did they have to reflect heat? Large, thick pieces of pottery. And then they would glow and they would spark and they would emit spark and fire and stuff and so forth, unlike a normal fire. So he's saying that it's that. Okay? The Gemara then turns to the beginning of the chapter. It's going to say, Ve'erev hine ruach sa'ara ba'am min hatzafon. At the beginning of the chapter of Ezekiel, before he says all the weird stuff about the animals, he says, I saw a stormy wind coming from the north. Anan gadol ve'esh mit lakachat. A great cloud with a fire that is grabbing, or a flashing fire. V'noga lo saviv. And a brilliance is surrounding it. Umitocha ke'en hachashmal mitoch ha'esh. And in its midst is like a chashmal within the fire. So the Gemara now quotes that for our conversation. Lehechan azal, and now it says, where did it go? Where did what go?
That whole thing.
The great stormy wind that came from the north in a great cloud of flashing fire with a brilliance around it, and in its midst, the chashmal in the midst of the fire. That thing. We'll call it, for lack of a better word, the wind. Okay? So where did the wind go? Amar Rav Yehuda, still our guy. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. He says in the name of Rav, Shehalach lichbosh et kol ha'olam kulo tachet Nebuchadnezzar harasha. That what happened? Remember, who and when is Ezekiel? Ezekiel is a prophet. Immediately after Nebuchadnezzar destroys Israel, he prophesizes the destruction of Israel in the temple. He lives to see the destruction of Israel in the temple. He's in Babylonia, the seat of power of the evil empire that just destroyed the temple, and he's getting a vision of God. And what he sees is this blasting, fiery furnace wind coming pouring down out of the north. Where'd it go? It went to destroy Nebuchadnezzar. Now, if you know who he is, that's not a bad answer. right? It went to destroy the whole world that Nebuchadnezzar had conquered. The kol kach lama. So the Gemara says, really? That's a really elaborate melodramatic presentation for a wind that comes to destroy Nebuchadnezzar. The kol kach lama, why do I need all of that? Right? Shelo yamru umot haolam, we need all of that, so the nations of the world won't say, B'yad umma shepala masar hakadosh baruch hu et banav, that in the hands of a lowly nation, the Holy One, blessed be He, delivered His children. In other words, somebody's going to come and destroy Nebuchadnezzar, maybe Persia, and we're going to be redeemed, and it looks like some human kingdom saved us. So you need all of this to show that it's like God against Pharaoh. God's the one who saved us from Nebuchadnezzar. That's why I needed this vision.
But we weren't saved from Nebuchadnezzar.
Eventually Persia does destroy Babylonia.
Persia destroyed Babylonia, but the Jews were not saved from Nebuchadnezzar.
No, we were not. But remember, this is Gemara, and it's being written in Babylonia in the year, well, we're back into the Aramaic, but we're quoting Beraitis, it's Rav Yehuda. You know, this is like the 3rd to the 4th century of the Common Era. Babylonia is a very strong empire at this time, so they're talking about their early roots, but having been an evil kingdom. We see their early roots as having been an evil kingdom that subjugated us. And now they have Babylonia that's under Persia in their day. Right? Persian. So what's their political reality that they're hemming and hawing around here by using these symbols of the earlier day? I don't really know. There's something here, though. Right? That the scholars of the age will come and tell me. But for our purposes, it's just that this is like, you know, you don't say that it was at the hand of a human that God's people were redeemed. It's going to be at the hand of God. So now, we have a complaint. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, blessed be He, said, Mi garam li she'eye shamash l'ovdei psilim. Who turned me into the assistant to the idol worshippers? That's not a good thing. So God is asking kind of a rhetorical, sarcastic question. Who turned me into the idol worshippers' personal servant? Right? And it says, Avnotehem shel Yisrael hen garmuli. The sins of the people of Israel have done this to me. So what does that mean?
It's always the sins of the people.
Absolutely. The only reason the temple was destroyed and we're in exile is it's our own fault.
That's right.
It's our sins. That's basic Talmudic theology. Okay, so
But where is this
what's he
coming
saying?
from? The Holy One, I mean, that whole sentence. Who caused me to be a servant? Where are they getting that?
God has to come out here and clean up this mess because we sinned. Why does God have to come out here and do all this? They just said He has to do this so that He can prove to the other nations that the nations aren't going to save His people, which means He's doing it for their benefit, which makes Him their servant. And who put Him in this lowly position of having to come in and be the fixer to some Goyish nation? Right? It's unseemly. Who did this to me? You did this to me. The sins of the people of Israel have done this to me. It's interesting.
It's interesting, but I would have thought that they would have had a kind of a proof text, which is easily found, about what God said.
Right. It's actually a one-liner, and we don't come back to it.
Okay.
It would be interesting to go to the manuscripts and to see if all the manuscripts have this one-liner in this place, or if it's a marginalia. If it was in a manuscript to the side and the printer put it in. Right? Which happens a lot. Happens a lot.
Commentary?
What's that? Yeah, like a commentary off on the side, or an emendation, or an alternate version that maybe one manuscript had and the other didn't. So when they copied and they had the two, they put this one in the margin because they're not sure if it's really part of it. But when the printer in Vilnius goes to print it, he's like, it's going in because the margin is Rashi. And it's definitely not Rashi, so I'm putting it in here because Rashi comments on it anyways. So he'll put it in. Right? That's how Talmud got to be the way it is, which is a little bit of a hodgepodge. Okay. 13b, continuing. The Gemara is going to go back to the book of Yechezkel now and quote it, Ve'ere hachayot v'hine ofan echad ba'aretz etzel hachayot. And I saw the angelic beings, and behold, there was a wheel on the earth with the chaya, right, with the chayot, with the angelic beings. So now we're going to get the wheel. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Elazar comes in and says, Malach echad shehu omed ba'aretz. So there's an angel who stands on the earth. You should know. Got this verse. We know there's an angel stands on the earth. V'rosho magia etzel chayot, and his head goes all the way up to where the chayot are. In other words, he's interpreting the ofan, the wheel, which, because wheels touch the ground and wheels go up to the top, that this is an angelic being of some kind who stands on the earth and whose head is up there with the rest of the chayot. Why? So, now we're going to get a baraita that's going to reflect on that. B'matnita Tana, in a baraita it is taught that Sandalphon Shemo, this angelic being's name is Sandalphon. What's that? V'hagavoa mechaverei mehalach chamesh me'ot shana. He is taller than all of his peers by a journey of 500 years. Ve'omed achorei hamerkava, and he stands behind the chariot. Ve'kosher kitarim lekono, and he weaves crowns for his maker. Rashi comes in and saves us from the anthropomorphisms and says that the crowns are all of the Torah learnings of the scholars that are woven for the maker as prayers that go up before God. Which is not what the Talmud says. Right? The Baraita is very anthropomorphic. And the Gemara then says, wait a minute, Ini, can that be? In other words, can he weave crowns for his creator? And it says, V'hakativ, but it says, Baruch kavod Adonai mimakomo. We have later in Ezekiel that blessed is the kavod of God from his place. Miklal de mikomo leka hayadale, which would teach us a general principle that nobody knows where the makom is. Because all we can ever see is the kavod, which is like a cloud that we can't penetrate. And the kavod comes from min komo, from God's place, wherever that is, we don't know where it is. So how could Sandalar possibly take these things and weave them as crowns to put on the head of God, who's in min komo, who nobody knows where it is? Got it?
Yeah, especially with a name like Sandalphon. I like that.
I should have named my kid Sandalphon. You know what it reminds me of?
Sandalim?
Max Smart. The Sandalphone.
Oh. The trivia round.
Lahavdil. For those of you who have stuck with me for 45 minutes, congratulations. That's what you're here for. That's your reward. De Amar Shem Atana. The Sandalphone does not know God's place. Rather, he pronounces the holy name upon a crown. V'azal v'yativ b'reshe, and he goes and sits on his head. So, in other words, it's words. The crown is words, and they go metaphorically to the head of God, like prayers go to God, and God is wreathed or coronated by the prayers of the children of Israel at the ushering of Sandalphon. Amar Rav. So, now, the vision of Ezekiel chapter 1 also exists in the book of Isaiah, but the call to Isaiah is very different. It's God sitting on a throne with robes, and that's pretty much it. And angels flying around, but without all the detail. So now we're going to try and put Ezekiel's vision of the throne and the angels with Isaiah's version of the throne and the angels. So, Amar Rava, Kol shera Yechezkel ra Yeshayahu. Everything Ezekiel saw, Isaiah saw. Lama Yechezkel dome. So how do we describe Yechezkel? What is he like? He is Levain Kfar Shira'a et HaMelech. He's like a podunk villager who sees the great king. Ulami Yeshayahu dome, and what is Yeshayahu like? Levain Krach Shira'a et HaMelech. A townsfolk or a cityfied person who sees the king. What's the difference? When podunk farmer sees the great king, how's he going to describe him?
Apparently with 4 heads.
Oh my God, he was huge, and he had a gold crown, and he had a raven, and the knights, and the horses, and the bells, and the this, and the that, and he's going to absolutely babble over all of the things that he saw, and he's not going to have words for half of what he saw, and he's going to try and describe it, and he's going to self-contradict, and he's going to be all this stuff because he's an unrefined farm boy seeing a magnificent king for the first time, as opposed to Isaiah, who is a courtier. And it's true, Isaiah is a courtier, and his language sounds like it, and all these things. He lives in the palace, and he's, he sees God on the throne, and he goes, oh yes, I saw God on the throne. He had a robe. Right? He's not thrown into convulsions over it, the way Ezekiel is. It was a very interesting interpretation, and it's an interpretation that Maimonides picks up as well, talking about how all prophets see the same thing, and the only reason their books sound any different is because of the imaginative faculty or ability of the prophet. Your own experiences are the kaleidoscope stones through which the white light shines. And when someone looks through your kaleidoscope at the white light, they're going to see the colors that you're able to pass forward to them. And every kaleidoscope is different. Every prophet is a kaleidoscope. One pure light, we're all looking at them. They all look and sound different, but that's because they themselves are different, and they have a different reference library of experience, vocabulary, and subtlety to draw from to describe to us what it is they've experienced. Right? Which actually I think is a brilliant interpretation of prophecy. It solves a lot of problems, and it's compelling. Okay, so that's what's happening here. So before going on to the next verse, because they're starting to work their way through now the chariot story in Ezekiel. Amar Reish Lakish. We've had Reish Lakish this chapter as well already. My dichtiv. What does the verse mean when it says, Asher l'Adonai ki ga'o ga'a? I will sing to the Lord, for he is exalted above exalting. Where is that from? The Song of the Sea. Right? This is Moses and the children of Israel across the Red Sea, and they sing this song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord a song of grandeur.
Shabbat Shira.
Shabbat Shira, we sing that, correct. All right, so, Shira Lamisha Mitgael Agaim, it means I will sing a song to he who is exalted above all the exalted ones. Damarmar, the master said, Melech Shebechayot Ari, the king of the beasts is the Ari, the lion. Melech Shebehemot is the shore. The king of cattle is the ox. The Melech Shebeofot is the nesher. The king of the birds is the eagle. Ve'adam mitga'e alehem, and man is exalted upon them all. Where is he going? He's going back to the vision of the animal faces in Ezekiel. These are the animals. Ve'akadosh baruch hu mitga'e al kulan ve'al kol ha'olam kulo, and the Holy One, blessed be He, is exalted on all of them and over the whole world in its entirety. And now we're ready for the next verse of Ezekiel, which does this. Katuv echad omer. One verse says, Udmut pneihem pnei adam, and the likenesses of their faces, a face of a man. Arbatan, and the lion's face is on the right side of the four of them. Ufnei shor mehasmol arbatan, and the ox's face is on the left of all four of them. So there's four angels, and they all have four faces. They have a man face, they have a lion face, they have an ox face, and what's not quoted in the Talmud is the backwards face is the eagle face. Okay, so that's one verse. Uchativ, but another verse in Ezekiel says, V'arba panim la'achad, each one had four faces, pnei ha'echad, pnei ha'kruv. The one face is the face of a cherub, upnei ha'sheni, pnei ha'adam, and the second face is the face of a man, v'hashlishi pnei aryeh, and the third is the face of a lion, v'arevi pnei nesher, and the fourth is the face of an eagle. Ve'ilu shor lo kachashiv, and what happened to the ox? See the problem? First time through, you've got man, ox, lion, eagle. The second time through, you have cherub, man, lion, eagle. What happened to the ox? Okay. Amar Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish comes in to try and help us. Yechezkel bikesh alav rachamim. Ezekiel, in the moment of this vision, he's shown, what is he shown? The first one. Man, ox, lion, eagle. And he immediately starts praying for mercy from God. V'hafachol l'karuv. And in response to his prayer for mercy, God changed it into a cherub. Changed the ox into a cherub. Amar lefanav, Ezekiel said before him, this was his prayer, Ribono shel olam, master of the universe. Katigor yaseh senigor? A prosecuting attorney can be turned into a defense attorney? Now, you need to know a lot for that to make any sense. Who's the prosecuting attorney? The prosecuting attorney is anything that comes as testimony or an example or a witness to condemn the people of Israel. And the defense attorney is anything that comes to save us from that condemnation. So how can an ox be a condemnation of the people of Israel? Golden calf. Yep. It's reminiscent of the golden calf. How can you have cattle imagery up there as God when the last time we used that kind of imagery for God, it was a massive mistake? So you're going to take the thing that condemned us and you're going to use it as a sign of redemption? So God changed it into a cherub. And it's probably not a pudgy-faced little baby with wings. That's a Renaissance cherub. The cherub is the big six-winged beast that we've been talking about. Okay? My karuv. So what is a karuv? Amar Rabbi Abahu. Rabbi Abahu says it's karavia. It is indeed like a child. It's karavia, which Aramaic is coming from ruv, which is a word that means child. So it's like a child. Shekol bebavel, I'm in the wrong place. Shekain bebavel korin linuka ravia. Because in Babylonia they call all young children ravia. Okay, so they're taking the play on words of karuv. And they're making it ru the and making it a different word, which the Talmud likes to do all the time. It's not good etymology, but it rhymes. So it's a pun. The Talmud puns for Midrash a lot. Okay, so they say that. Amar le Rav Papa le Abaye, Papa says to Abaye, Elamata dichtiv. But if that's it, then what about when it says in another verse, Pnei achad, Pnei akaruv, Pnei asheni, Pnei adam? If it's a kid, then why would it say the face of a cherub and the face of a human? Isn't a kid a human? Right? Vashlishi Pnei ari v'arivi Pnei nesher. And the third is a lion and the fourth is an eagle. And the answer is, you can guess, Hainu Pnei Kruv, Hainu Pnei Adam, the face of a cherub, the face of a man. Aren't they the same thing? And the answer is, Ape Rav Revei v'Ape Zutre. One is young and one is old. Right? A kid's face.
Says one is a big face and the other is a
Okay,
small.
one's a big face and one's a little face. That's the best translation of the words. It means one's an Altacocker and one's a Pisher. Okay? So they're different. All right, now, what time is it? 12:56. We'll keep going. Katuv echad omer. So now we're going to go with another place where in Ezekiel there's a contradiction. Remember, we have a prohibition against studying all this stuff from the word chashmal. So we are before chashmal. We're looking at the animal faces and everything that's seen before the chashmal, and we're really going into detail. But we're focused on contradictions and resolving contradictions because it is the resolution of the contradictions that allows Yechezkel to be in the Tanakh at all. It's only if we can resolve contradictions that this is sacred literature. That's what Hananiah did in the attic, right? So we're pursuing resolutions to some of the things that maybe Hananiah fixed when he was up in the attic with the 300 barrels of oil to study from. Okay?
Yeah, but it's not the Talmud's place to to make Yecheskel a part of the Torah.
Well, they know it's part of the Torah, but they're going into the resolutions
As
that
to
they think they
why.
found. It's too interesting to leave it alone,
You're right.
right? If you see something yucky by the side of the road, don't you want to poke it with a stick?
No.
No, I'm actually driving.
You want to just poke it a little, see what it
I
is.
say Merkavah is the most interesting part of this.
Right,
discussion.
right. This is fun stuff. This is not going to get you anywhere in life, folks. Right? There's not going to be a resolution here where suddenly the relationship with your mother-in-law makes sense to you. This is. We're just having fun. Okay?
It's Lishma.
It's lishma. It's purely lishma. Okay. Okay. Now, Katuv echad omer. One verse says, "Shesh knafayim leechad." One says there's six wings to every one. And by the way the verse goes on, that it says two covers its face, two covers its legs, and with two it will fly. And one calls one to the other. Kadosh, 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 and a Tzvot Melech Haaretz Kavodo, which is why we do the bouncing up and down thing when we're in the Kedusha. Okay?
That's
Fair.
why?
Well, it's from this and Ezekiel. Yeah, we're imitating the angels. The wings going up and
I thought we were
down.
trying to get closer.
It doesn't last long, does it? Okay, so anyways, v'katuv echad omer, and another verse says, Arba panim la'achat v'arba, panim la'achad v'arba knafayim la'achat lahem. And the second telling says that they have 4 pairs of wings. So which is it? Are there 6 pairs of wings, or are there 4 pairs of wings? Now remember, last time when we asked the question, what happened to the ox? It was that God changed it. So evidently, between the first telling and the second telling, which are in the same chapter, God might change things. So we're gonna kind of glom onto that idea. Lakashi, it's not difficult. Kan bisman shebeit hamikdash kayam. The first one is in the time when there was still a temple. In other words, Isaiah's vision of the angels with 6 wings. Kan, here in Ezekiel, bisman she'en beit hamikdash kayam. After the temple is destroyed, they only have 4 wings. It's interesting that the destruction of the temple can somehow destroy a pair of wings from the angels. What does that mean? Kivyachol shenitma'atu kanfei hachayot. So it's as if, like, God forbid, lahavdil separate, as if you could talk about angelic beings in physical ways, as if the wings of the chayot were reduced. Right? Well, really? That's interesting. And so the Gemara says, Haminaiho imuta. I love it. Oh, so one of the pairs of wings got taken away. Which one? The ones that cover the head, the ones that cover the body, the ones that cover the legs? I'm sorry, the ones that cover the head, the ones that cover the legs, or the ones that they're flying with? Which one? Well, let's see. Amar Rav Hanan el Amar Rav. He says, Otan she'omrot shirei bahem. They're the ones that, Shira bahem. They're the ones that they sang with. Did you know that they were singing with some of these wings? Kativ hacha, because this is written here in Isaiah. Ovishtaim ye'ufaf ukraze el zev amar. And it says, and with 2 they were flying and calling out to each other, holy, holy, holy. Uchativ, and it's written in Proverbs, v'ta'if enecha bo ve'enenu. You have cast your eyes upon it, and it is no longer there. And it has the root of the word ya'if, to fly, in both cases. And in both cases, the thing that happens with the ya'uf is singing. And therefore, the wings are what they sing with. Which means when the temple was destroyed, they could no longer sing. Which is actually a really interesting metaphor. Since one of the things they do is bring the prayers of the Israelites to God. And the songs of the Israelites to God. Right? And if some of those prayers have been made impossible by the destruction of the temple, they can no longer arrive. The angels have also lost that ability. Right? Which is interesting. Okay, and now a dissenting view, and we're going to try and get to a place where we can stop. Rabbanan Amrei, the rabbi said, Otan shebimechasot behem raglehem. No, the 2 that they lost were the ones that were covering their feet or their legs, shene'emar, because it is also written in Ezekiel, v'raglehem regel yeshara. So Ezekiel's describing them, and he says, and their leg was a straight leg. How does he know?
They weren't covered.
Well, he has visions all the time.
Well, but the vision is of people with wings covering their legs. So how does he know what the legs look like?
Change the vision. A vision is a vision.
Okay, for the rabbis, that's a problem. So the only solution is he got to see them. So how did he get to see them? Because those wings were taken away. And now he could see them. Okay? I don't know if that's a good answer or a bad answer. That's their answer. Ve'ilav demiuta mina haviyada, and then he knew. So they took it away, and then he knew. Dilma the igale v'chazyale, and they're going to say no. Maybe they were moving their wings, so he got sneak peeks behind them. De'ilav teimahachi, because if you don't say this, udemut pneihem pnei adam, for the likeness of their faces, there's a human face. You could ask the same question. Hachiname de'imuta. How? Also, they had to have taken those wings away because two wings were covering their faces. So how can you describe the faces if the wings are covering the faces? So the faces have to be getting revealed every once in a while. So did the legs. Ala de'igale v'chazyale. They got revealed and he saw them. So here too, hachanami de'igale v'chazyale. He also saw them. And the Gemara is now going to defend it by saying hachi hashta. And now that is. Now the Gemara is going to say, no, that's not true. It's not the same thing. Seeing the faces and seeing the legs is not the same thing. Bishlema ape orach ara de galuye kame rabe. It is well and fine that it's proper etiquette to uncover one's face before one's master. However, riya lav orach ara de galuye kame rabe. It's not proper to uncover your legs in front of your master. So it would be normal for them to show their faces because they're standing in the presence of God and they would unveil themselves out of kavod to God. But you don't really unveil your lower parts in front of your master as a sign of kavod. So he shouldn't have been able to see the feet. Therefore, those are the wings that were taken away. Right?
I love it.
Okay. Katuv echad omer, and we're going to stop. I really want to get to the Baraita. Let me give the two more sentences here. One verse says, Aleph alafim yishmashune v'ribo rivavin kadamohi yakuman. Okay, 1,000 thousands were serving him, and a myriads were standing before him. All right, so what does this mean? Katuv achad, and another verse says, Haya mispar legidudav. Is there a number for his legions? So I have a verse that says exactly how many thousands and thousands of legions there were serving him. I have another verse that says his legions are innumerable. So which is it? I know the number or I can't know the number? La kashya, it's not a difficulty. Kan bisman shebeit hamikdash kayam. The first one you can number it because the temple was still standing. Kan bisman she'en beit hamikdash kayam, but when the temple was destroyed, you can no longer count them. Kiv yachol, as if, God forbid, you could say in non-anthropomorphic terms, she'nit ma'ata malia shel mala, that the members of the heavenly court were reduced as if you could say. So, in other words, we've got another Beit Mikdash standing, Beit Mikdash not standing, the things you can see and the things you can't see, that the things are diminished by the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, so we're moving through Maaseh Merkavah with some detail.
Yes.
But the cutoff was Chashmal, which is too dangerous to talk about. Right? All right, so we're going to move on. The next thing where we pick up is going to be the Tanya of Rabbi, which is going to be the a Baraita from the editor of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. It's interesting to have a Baraita from the editor of the Mishnah, since if it was important to him, why didn't he put it in the Mishnah?
Right.
Right? So this is a Baraita that he himself, by himself, cut his own teaching out of the Mishnah, but they're going to bring it back and teach it in this spot. So we're going to pick up, we are about 4/5 of the way, really in the long lines, halfway down the longest lines at the bottom of page 13b in chapter 2 of Chagiga with the Baraita of Rebbe. All right, thank you.
Thank
Running
Thank
out.
you.
you.
Was the hot wind